Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Got an interesting show I'd love you to stick around for. Definitely going to talk some Isiah Thomas and Michael Jordan. Seems like the beef just won't end. But before we get to that, you know what we got to do. Go ahead, if you haven't already, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell right here on your screen. That way you can be alerted to whenever new content comes out and you can stay on top of what we're trying to continue to bring you. If you want the audio only podcast, go ahead, open up your audio only podcast platform, open up the search bar, type in the Format Podcast, give us a little search. We should come on up, and then you can subscribe right there. If you enjoy the content, please give us that 5-star review and leave a comment on YouTube or on your audio podcast platform. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us, and let's get right to it. So I mentioned it on the intro. It seems like Isiah Thomas and Michael Jordan, this beef just will never end. And so the crazy part is Isiah Thomas is an all-time great. I have him not as a top 10 player all time, but as my number 2 point guard all time, as my best little man all time. And I think that people often forget just how great Isiah Thomas was. And I think there's a huge reason for that. The reason for that, I think, really stems back to the Pistons-Bulls rivalry, and as such, the rivalry between Michael Jordan and Isiah Thomas that has gone on since then. So I want to say for 4 years in a row, from 88, 89, 90, and 91, the Pistons and the Bulls played each other in the Eastern Conference Finals. And finally, in the 90-91 season, Michael Jordan broke through and went on to win his first championship. And the I suppose root of all of that was at the time, Isiah's Pistons had gone to 3 straight NBA finals, had won 2 championships, were known as the bad boys, played a really brutal physical brand of basketball, mainly characterized by, the quote unquote Jordan rules. No layups, no dunks, really, being extremely physical to guys when they were coming in the paint. Not just to Michael Jordan, but obviously because of Michael Jordan's notoriety and his greatness, and part of that all becoming part of his mythos and his legend. That's what gets, the main part of the attention when it comes to that story. But yeah, year after year, Jordan was getting knocked out of the playoffs by the Pistons. He was getting bigger, he was getting stronger, and he worked and worked, and finally Scottie Pippen, Phil Jackson, and the rest of the Bulls broke through and defeated the Pistons. But what happened then? When they finally beat the Pistons walked off the court without shaking the hands of Michael Jordan and his teammates. And as a result of that, Michael Jordan has held that grudge ever since. Now, if you hear Isiah Thomas tell the story, he'll explain that in his opinion and his vision, there was more to it than that. He says that the Celtics also walked off the court without shaking hands with the Pistons when they beat them previously in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So you can go back and check that. That is true, but obviously, nuance and information and evidence doesn't really matter too much in the modern sporting discussion landscape, right? Or I guess in the modern landscape period. You can give someone all the information, evidence they want, and if they don't believe it, they're just not going to, no matter how true it may be. Now, so since then, there's been pretty much a grudge between Isiah Thomas and Michael Jordan, and it's interesting because with that, Isiah Thomas's attitude towards Jordan, you can see, has clearly changed. At one point, not too long after Isiah retired, he was calling games for NBC, and he acknowledged that Michael Jordan was the greatest player he's ever seen. But as that beef continued to grow colder, his opinions on that changed throughout the years multiple times. Now, with that said, you can actually go back and check. I think I did a short and I did a show on it on this channel, basically demonstrating all the different people that Isiah Thomas said was the GOAT. And for me, a big part of that was probably just a function of, he didn't want to give Michael Jordan that credit since they were beefing. So anyway, then you have The Last Dance come out, which really, during the pandemic, which really kind of reheated that beef, because you see Isiah Thomas giving his commentary on the Bulls and the walk-off and the playoffs and Michael Jordan, and you hear Michael Jordan call Isiah an a-hole. And, he says he hates him. Now, one thing about Michael Jordan, he did say as much as he hates him, he respects his ability as a player and has him as second best of all time. You hear Michael Jordan's longtime friend, Charles Oakley. He has stuff to say about it, and he's telling telling the world on the All the Smoke podcast that Michael Jordan doesn't want to be your friend. Go ahead, let it go. And so this is interesting. But so for me, I think the biggest reason why this is so problematic for Isiah Thomas is because Michael Jordan, as we know, is a legend, and he's thought of by most basketball fans as the greatest player of all time. Now, obviously, that's shifting somewhat towards LeBron James. Now you have a larger contingent saying that LeBron is the greatest player they've ever seen, and so be it. I've done a number of topics on that. You can check those out on the channel as well. But when it comes to this Jordan-Isiah beef, obviously Jordan is very comfortable in his position and how he's regarded. But for me, I think one of the things that is really frustrating Isiah Thomas is the fact that people are forgetting just how great this guy was as a result of this beef. Jordan has obviously a commanding presence, a commanding voice, and just a shadow that looms over everything in the basketball world. So you go back to Isiah Thomas and you think, okay, he won championships in high school as, McDonald's All-American guy out of the city of Chicago, which obviously has an incredible NBA pipeline right there with, your New Yorks and your Baltimores and your DCs. Chicago is one of those, and your LAs. Chicago is one of those cities, all right? So now he's winning championships in high school. And then he wins an NCAA championship at Indiana with Bobby Knight in 1981. Then he goes to 3 straight finals in the NBA and wins back-to-back titles with the Pistons in 89 and 90. So you look at it, this guy's a winner on every level. And so he doesn't take it lightly that he's one of the greatest players of all time, probably a top 15, top 20 guy pretty easily. And no one seems to talk about that. And he feels his legacy, and you can see it, he feels his legacy is clearly getting diminished by all this stuff going on with Michael Jordan, and he doesn't like it. Now let's think about this. Isiah Thomas averaged 19 points and 9.3 assists per game in his career. Now, those numbers on their face don't sound so great today, but we've talked time and time again about the rules changes and the pace of play and all that stuff, and how all that's been done to boost the numbers. But when he retired, he was third in NBA history in assists with over 9,061. Fifth in league history in steals, 1,861, right? So he's now, I think, 9th or 10th in assists all time. And his average is 9.3 assists per game, and that's 5th all time. This guy was no bum. This guy could do it to you. You've seen him dominate a lot of guys. He was an incredible ball handler, not a great shooter, because again, back then the 3-ball wasn't a huge part of the game, but he could get to the rim and finish on just about anybody because he was that great a player. And you can tell just how frustrating that is for him when he feels like his legacy is being greatly diminished as a result of this, quote unquote beef with Michael Jordan. And it seems now you can look at this thing 2 ways, right? Since The Last Dance, you can look at it and say he's been on a crusade to kind of clear his name and tell his side. But also you can say that every appearance he makes, people are asking him about this beef. So he's just answering the questions. And Isiah, we know he was a fearless guy. This is a guy, remember, as a player, they said he would cut your heart out to win a basketball game. They called him the Little General. So this guy is he's not any average player. He's a guy that's going to look you in the eye and tell you, hey, remember, I'm the only guy that can say that they beat Magic, Bird, and Jordan all in their prime. And realistically, Isiah is the only guy who can say that. He did all that, and so he definitely isn't getting his due in terms of being, one of those all-time greats, So let's take a second and listen to what Isiah had to say about this whole issue.
I live with love, peace, truth, honesty, courage. I stand on my square. I'm upright, I'm independent. And I sit in any chair and I talk to anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some people they ain't been telling the truth, right? Now, anywhere, anytime, publicly, Don't call me behind the scenes apologizing or asking your friends to apologize, right? You got on national television and you called me an asshole. And then you said you hated me. You said that on national television. Now, if you didn't mean it, get on national television
You say that.
and apologize for it. Now, if you meant it, let it ride as it is. But so I called you, and that same day, you know who I called? I called Magic Johnson. Magic was on a plane. They was shooting a commercial in Atlanta. Him, Sam Jackson, everybody else. We were standing in the Four Seasons Hotel. We missed each other, right? Because he said he had to go, so he on the plane, right? I call him up. Magic didn't mention Michael Jordan. All right. So I'm still waiting. You know, everybody say this stuff publicly, right? Hey, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do. All right, well, I'm the type of guy, I sit here, I talk to you, I talk to you. It ain't a person in this United States of America that I'm not willing to sit down and have a conversation with and break bread with. But if you lying and throwing stones from behind the scenes, okay, that's you. But if you honest and you upright on your square, I'm willing to deal with it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, so that's all I know.
So you hear what he had to say, and you could tell how much this thing bothers him. And so the problem for me is this, right? Isiah doesn't have the most iconic shoe brand in history, in the Jordan brand, right? Shoe and apparel. And that's a huge part of Jordan's legacy and why people still know, 20 years after he played his last game, who he is and how great he was, right? Because of the Jordan brand clothes and shoe line. And so Isiah doesn't have that. He's not a particularly large guy. If you're not a basketball fan, he probably can walk around and people won't know who he is because he's 6 feet tall, maybe 6'1". He looks like an average sized man, right? He's not necessarily a standout, but he knows what he did. Again, winning on every level. He can walk around and he can, hold his head high and hold his chest out and say, hey, I beat 3 of the greatest to ever do it while they were in their primes. But I know that it has to be frustrating for him. And this is why he keeps going out and giving his side of it and saying what he has to say. Unfortunately, the problem is this. Zeke can't win this one. He just can't. There's nobody that's bigger than Michael Jordan. And if we want to be real here, Michael Jordan's shadow may loom larger than the actual NBA itself, right? People who are not basketball fans in most corners of the world know who Michael Jordan is, even if they never followed the NBA. So it's frustrating for me as a basketball fan, as a quote unquote old school basketball fan, as a fan of Michael Jordan, as a fan of Isiah Thomas, as a fan of that era, knowing just how great Isiah Thomas was. It doesn't matter how much truth he tells. It doesn't matter how much nuance he gives to the entire story and the beef between those two. He just can't win this one because Jordan's shadow looms too large. There's just no way around it. So, it's tough. I think Isiah needs to just go ahead, give it up. And real quick before I let this one go, I know it's even more frustrating for him because remember I mentioned earlier that Jordan called him an a-hole in front of pretty much the entire world on The Last Dance. But according to Isiah, people in Jordan's circle have called him and said, no, Jordan didn't mean it like that, but they're doing it behind the scenes. So what Isiah is saying is, listen, if you didn't mean it like that, come out in front of the whole world and apologize the same way that you're having people call behind the scenes. But the fact is, Zeke, Mike, and Mike is legendarily petty. He's not going to come out and apologize. It's not going to happen. So I'm going to just close it out with this. Zeke, as much as I love you as a player and think you are absolutely incredible, second best point guard of all time, best little man of all time, and a top 20 player of all time, you cannot win this battle. So let it go. You can sleep easy at night knowing how great you were. It's unfortunate that the rank and file won't know how great you are because of this, but you know, and that's all that matters. All right, so what I want to know from you, what do you think about Isiah Thomas, and what do you think about his responses to all this? What do you think about Michael Jordan and this beef? Do you think it can ever be squashed? Do you want to see it squashed? All right, leave those comments in the comment section below, and can't wait to hear from you, and I'll be back next time, and I'm out. Peace.